a fairly large hand, whether it's a big pocket pair or something like ace king, ace queen, maybe even ace jack, but most likely a pretty good hand. He checks to me on the flop. I think most of his limp three betting range here is going to hit this board pretty hard because, like I said, a lot of it's going to be highish pocket pairs or some big Broadway hands. So I don't think, even though he checks to me, I think betting into him is probably not a good play because I don't expect him to fold that much. He might have something like pocket jacks or pocket kings that he's not going to be fond of, but like I said before, I don't expect him to fold really any piece of the flop to one barrel, and I'm not sure how often he would fold to two or three barrels even. So, given that he could also be slow playing a monster hand, I think it's much better to check behind and take a free card, and hope he does have something like aces or ace king, and then hit hard on the turn and get a lot of money in then. The turn brings an ace. He checks to me again. Again, I don't think there's real value in betting here because, again, if he's got pocket kings, he's not going anywhere. So I think you're just not going to get him to fold that much. Now, if he checked to me on the river again, I'd consider taking a stab at it just because I do have 7 high and I don't have, obviously no way of winning a showdown. But, like I said, it's just, I don't expect to get him to fold that much. So, even though I have absolutely no chance of winning once I hit the check button, I just don't expect him to fold that much. And he actually did have a monster hand on the flop and chose to slow play it on 3 streets. So that's just not really a good play by him. I mean, the board's such a drawy board that he really needs to bet there to get value from things like if I have queen king or I've got if I had 10 jack or something like that, because unless he absolutely knows that I'm just like a really aggressive spewonky and just will keep firing when check two, I mean, there's absolutely no reason not to bet there. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to punish his mistake by hitting a heart. If I hit a heart on the turn, I'm probably going to stack him. So it's one of those things where he misplayed his hand, but he got away with it because I wasn't able to catch up. And obviously, if he bet, I'm probably if he bets the flop, I'm definitely calling the flop. So he definitely missed out on some value there. But lucky for him, the heart didn't hit, and he didn't lose more than he could have. Table 4, ace-6 offsuit against a 26 or so BB stack. If there's a 20 BB stack in the blinds, a lot of times I'll open to 2.5x on the button instead of 3x on the button, but kind of doesn't really matter either way. But again, it's a bet sizing thing where you can kind of scale it down with smaller stacks left to act behind you. So overall, I think really the mindset you should have is that a lot of your winnings are going to come in the spots where you take more from your opponents than they would take from you in a similar spot. So the hand versus Cincy style, if I've got pocket tens there and he's got 6-7 suited, first of all, I'm just going to raise it up from the small blind, and he's not going anywhere 6-7 suited. So then the flop comes, ace queen 10, and I'm going to get a lot more value from him than because he has a flush draw, and I'm going to bet the flop and bet the turn. He's most likely going to come along. So I'm definitely going to get 20, 30 big blinds from him. Or in the same situation, he chose to slow play all 3 streets and got absolutely zero value. Limp 3 betting, not only did he get zero value post flop, but he also made it pretty clear what type of hand range he was on. And so he made it very profitable for me with great odds in position to take a cheap flop and if the heart had hit to get a lot of value. 10-6 suited on table 1. I mean, I could limp behind given that there are some weaker players in the hand, but with 10-6 suited, it's not that great of a hand, and the perceived weaker players are somewhat shorter stacked. So there's not as much implied odds there. So even if I do hit a big hand, there's not as much value because there's just less to win. And so I think it's a fine fold. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think it's a bad play to limp there. Probably wouldn't isolate because, again, they have smaller stacks, so there's not as much room to maneuver. But really, anytime playing a pot in position versus a weak player is never really terrible. I'd much rather have something like 10-9 or 10-8 than 10-6, just because it's going to be a little easier to, one, make it straight, and two, somewhat easier to make a slightly stronger pair. So far this month, I can't really complain about results. I think I'm playing pretty well. I mean, as I've stressed before, my results, are good. They're probably not as good as I would have liked them to be. But I think throughout the month, I do think I'm playing very well. And so I think that as long as you can continue to play your A game, even when the results aren't there, the more likely it will be that your downswings won't last as long and they won't be as big. So definitely, it can be one of the hardest things, and you can't really stress it enough in a video. And even though I say don't let downswings affect you and play your A game always, obviously it's not as easy. It's easier said than done. So, but I mean, one thing I do recommend is if a session's not going well, just don't force yourself to play, because I think that's a lot of times when you get yourself in a lot of difficult spots and you just tend to bleed off some money is when you say, okay, today I'm going to sit down, I'm going to play for 2 hours, or today I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get in 2,000 hands. If the day's just not running well for you or you're having a bad day, I definitely think that playing when you're just not feeling great or you're frustrated or you've had a fight with somebody, you're just not emotionally ready to play. I think those are the spots where you get in a ton of trouble, and you a lot of times you might think you're playing well, but if you go back and actually look at sessions later on, you realize you made some pretty big mistakes that you might not have thought of at the time. Like for instance, one hand earlier when I had Queen 10 in the blind battle, and I got check min raised, and his hand looked pretty weak. You might think at the time, this range is so weak, I'm just going to shove, it's going to be a profitable play. But when you actually break down the math, you figure out that not only is it a losing play, but a fairly substantial losing play, and one that, if it doesn't work out, is likely to frustrate you even more, leading to more losing plays. So definitely important to keep emotions under control. 10-7 suited on table 3, I choose to limp the small blind after an early position limper. This is a spot where it's only $1 more to limp, and 10-7 suited is slightly better than 10-6 just because it's, again, a little bit easier to make it straight. I don't mind a fold here either, but I think given good odds and the big blind doesn't seem to be a super aggressive player as far as he's just going to automatically re-isolate or isolate the under the gun limper. So I think there's a pretty good chance it'll get checked through, and I can see a flop. Decent flop for me, mid pair and a backdoor flush draw. So I choose to lead out here because my hand's likely good, and definitely, I mean, there are a decent amount of hands I want to protect from. I mean, things like Jack 9, a lot of different gut shots, like obviously Jack Queen, I've got a ton of outs versus me. And so, I mean, not too many, I wouldn't imagine there's going to be too many, hands I can, like, bet for value.